welcome back, everyone, to the Wednesday Morning Live presented by Inside Texas. Before we hop on over to Paul and talk some college football, ask how he's doing, make sure you guys are going over to Inside Texas and checking out this awesome new promo we've got going on. $1 for 3 months of content for new members. It's about as good as it gets when you're looking for your Texas football, basketball, baseball, and everything in between needs. You can join Inside Texas today for just $1. Paul, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. $1 for 3 months. What? 33 cents a month. Unbelievable.
They keep reinventing ways to make it so you can't not go click that subscribe button. I don't know how you say no to that.
Got to do it.
How you doing, Sugar Poppy Chulo? Hope you're doing good on this Wednesday morning. We are going to talk about something Paul wrote about, I believe, yesterday or 2 days ago, kind of what the future of roster building is for college football and what you might need to prioritize. And I'm going to pull up your article right here in this chart, which you kind of noted on the article. It's a little bit noisy, and I'll even try to zoom in even more. But just for people who have no idea what they're looking at, what is this? Why is Texas to the top, Paul? Why does this matter?
Oh, okay. So this isn't roster building. This is strength of schedule.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Excuse me. The roster building comes a little bit later, but this is the strength of schedule graphs for the start.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, it's a little busy. But if you embiggen it, basically it tells you that Texas is projected to have the hardest schedule in college football. And so one of the things that's interesting is if you look at they created a mean and a median through line as you scroll down this chart. And what you realize very quickly is the loss column bias that we're sort of all trained on in college football, especially the olds. It really lays bare what a fallacy it is to just judge things by wins and losses, purely binary, because there are teams playing entirely different universes of football. So, for example, Texas's average season opponent is harder than any team that Texas Tech will play all season.
Yeah.
But if Texas Tech goes 12-0, and Texas is 9-3, the received wisdom will be, win it on the field. Tech's undefeated. And so human psychology, it's the same psychology in the draft, Evan, where a college quarterback who started 14 starts in college but played well in 1 year, they're like, oh, imagine, the line only goes up, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you realize after 41 college starts and the guy got different receivers and a different O-line and a different coordinator and a different schedule, suddenly all the warts are laid bare because he had enough data points. Yeah. And so I think the inherent problem, and you and I have kind of talked about this a little bit, we're trying to college basketballify college football, but you can't, because one, college football has a different level of athletic certainty. And what I mean by that is Texas can play UMass in football 100 times. UMass won't win a game. Okay? UMass could play Duke in basketball, and UMass is terrible now in basketball, so that was a terrible team to pick because they used to be good. That's going to confuse this. But they'll beat them 5 times.
Yep.
Like they'll go 17 of 18 from 3 or something crazy, right? And they'll win. So, on the scale of athletic certainty, football's near the top, basketball below it, and then baseball, a sorry baseball team can beat all stars on a given day, right? If your pitcher's on. So that's the crazy thing. And so the problem is you have 12 game schedules and you don't have very robust data sets. And it's very parochial because we've just gone to 9-game conference schedules for the 2 big conferences that matter. And so you get even less data points outside the conference. So a common scoffing at this would be, well, this is all just self-referential. This is just the SEC little, circle. What's the PG-13 version of what I'm looking for? It's the SEC Self-Admiration Society, yes, right?
There you go.
They're not playing anyone outside that league. So how do we know this is valid, right? Well, ideally, we'd be playing multiple non-conference opponents from other P4 schools. And if you get enough round robin data points, even in football with a small data set of 12 games versus, say, college basketball's 38, whatever, you actually do get some useful data. It's not statistical certainty. It's not a p-value and confidence interval. But actually, if Texas plays two Big 12 teams, an ACC team, and a Big 10 team in their non-con, and everyone else does something similar, you do actually get some data points. And then you can actually create metrics that are really useful. But we're moving away from that world. We're moving towards, weirdly, more insularity in the conferences.
Well, and one that really stood out to me here in your examples is, of course, Texas. You see them with Ole Miss and Ohio State, A&M, and Oklahoma. And then even that separation there, you're still Tennessee and Missouri and LSU and Florida. Like those are all tough games and tough programs. But like I look at this Michigan, who is a Big Ten team who's third in this graph, and they're playing the Big Three all in the Big Ten with Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State. But they also have this Oklahoma game, not to mention Penn State and Iowa. Whereas I scroll down and look how far it takes me to get to where Indiana is, and I might have even overshot it right here with Indiana and Oregon, because sure, I mean, they dodge each other, but their toughest out of conference is a Boise State and a North Texas. And that's where the weighing even within conference is different, where Indiana's 12 games and they're 11-1 is probably less impressive than Michigan's 10-2. But that would never show up, especially if it meant that both teams do make it. Like that wouldn't matter at a certain point at that level. But what if Michigan is 9-3 and their only 3 losses are to those big time Big Ten teams? Where do you even rank a team like that?
Exactly. And how do you seed them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if that Michigan team went 10-2, that'd be very impressive.
Yeah.
But an 11-1 Indiana who played no one is going to be the higher seed in the conference playoff. And that matters. I mean, those opening rounds are at the opponent stadium until you get to the neutral. So that means something, right? Texas having to travel to Lubbock is a very different creature from Texas Tech traveling to Texas. So, and I just think it's an interesting thing. Obviously, hey, I know the bottom line is just go win enough games and make the playoff. But part of the point of my article was, and I warned about this 3 years ago, we're going to have to adopt an NFL mentality. And the NFL mentality is just get in the playoffs. Like if you're the wild card, and now we're 17 game regular, schedule. If you're a 10-7 wild card, you have a chance to win it all. And that's the mentality. And in college football, it's like you're 9-3, go play in your second tier bowl. You don't belong. Well, now we have a format, and increasingly it's going to be a format when we get 24, and it's going to happen. Yeah. You're going to have like potentially an 8-4 teams making the playoffs. I mean, it's kind of silly.
Iowa getting your 24th team at 8-4 every year.
There you go. So, and they would be a pain in the ass to play, even if you're good. So,
right.
They'll take the air out of the ball.
15-10.
Yeah, you'll have to win like 17-10, and you'll double them up in yards and still somehow, be in dispute in the fourth quarter. But yeah, I think the bigger psychology that's interesting here is we tend to take the most optimistic stance on a 0 in the loss column. Yep. And so people are like, well, they had a pathetic schedule. They played this team, they didn't play them. Yeah, but man, did you see how they pasted those teams? And it's just how we think. Whereas Georgia in the middle of an SEC schedule, third week on the road, grinds one out against South Carolina, and people are like, man, Georgia looked like crap. They're kind of a pretender. And the fact is, what we have, and we have, again, getting back to limited data points, this new playoff format is 2 years old. But we have evidence in those 2 years, just make the playoff. And the most important thing is your upside. So your floor as a team, that's great for going 8-4 and going to the Liberty Bowl, like beat the teams you're supposed to beat. But your ceiling is what matters. So 10-2 Ohio State 2 years ago, beaten by Oregon, humiliated by their rival Michigan again. They're kind of in disarray, and they go in the playoff, they get it together, and they sweep through. The only team that really gave them a strong competitive game was Texas. Yeah. They humiliated Oregon. They destroyed Tennessee on their field, and they beat Notre Dame probably more handily than the score suggested.
Yeah.
So was there any doubt they were the best team?
I don't think so.
No. But
No.
if you'd ask people that December 3rd, they'd be like, Ohio State's a fraud. They're mentally weak, blah, blah. Well, the point is the NFL draft later said 14 dudes from Ohio State belong in our league. They were the best team. They finally got it together. Ceiling matters. The following year, so they didn't win at all, but they played for the title. Miami lost to freaking Louisville and SMU. They make the playoff by pure luck because they managed to play Notre Dame, the team that the committee wanted to put in, but they beat them head to head. And the committee couldn't say that games matter on the field and put Notre Dame in ahead of Miami, right? So Miami makes it in. Everyone's like, oh, whatever, underachiever, Mario Cristobal. They light up 3 teams in a row, and then they play Indiana within a touchdown in the title game and give Indiana their best game of the playoff. So upside, ceiling. That's what matters. So all this is to prep you for, you're not going to be happy if Texas loses mid-season to Ole Miss, because we've had, 5 competitive hard games in a row. But if we're 10-2 at the end of the season and we're in the dance, we're in good shape, because I'm pretty sure our ceiling and upside will be pretty high.
Well, there's something to be said as well about what a loss can do for a program. And Connor's been someone who, you talk to in the past, and it's like, hey, they're winning games. Here's some warts and here's some problems that are kind of being distracted among the fan base and being distracted, maybe even inside the locker room of like, hey, in 2024, the run game was clearly a problem. And it really didn't show up because you played a little bit of an easier schedule and it showed up in rivalry games, but that came to be a big issue against Georgia, and it became to be a big issue against Ohio State when you couldn't consistently string together drives. So there's something to be said where if you do lose that midseason game to Ole Miss and you're entering that 3 out of 4 away game schedule at the end of the year with only 1 loss, like maybe that loss is even an upside thing for you. Like you'd prefer to have had that and gotten it out of the way, as long as it means that you're going to be able to bounce back. If, of course, you're going to win the next few games and only come in at 10-2 instead of 9-3 and potentially not be in the playoff.
Well, that's funny. That's an old college basketball trope, right? Mm-hmm. That no college basketball coach wants an undefeated team. Yeah, exactly. I had him. Yes, I someday I'll acknowledge you, Evan. Yeah, it's complicated.
Once I turn 18.
That's right. When you turn 18 and you start shaving, we'll have it. But that's the further college basketballification of college football, that's an old trope of college basketball coaches. I don't want to be undefeated, and you'll hear a team that's 18-0, they'll lose a game in a last-second shot, to Iowa on their court, and they're like, "Good, we're glad we needed that loss." Right? College football 5 years ago, you're like, we're not playing for the national title now. Our season's ruined. We just oh my God. This is a little before your time, Evan, but you can look it up. Florida State had a run. So Florida State used to be good in football, right?
Yes, I'm aware. I can remember Jameis Winston falling backwards.
Okay, there you go. So even before Jameis, Florida State was even better in football. And they had this streak of every year they had a top 3 or top 5 finish, 14 years in a row. But every year they would blow it during the regular season, either to Miami, their big thorn in the side, or to some ACC opponent, like some random year Virginia would be talented and they'd upset them, right, in Charlottesville. And their season was over. And I'm telling you, some of those Florida State teams were easily the best team in college football. Had there been a playoff format, they'd be remembered as national. Some of them would be national champions. But back then, you lose a game, you stub your toe once, your season's over. Now you could stub your toe twice, and you're still going to get in if you're in a competitive schedule and you have a brand name. The question is, can you lose 3? And the committee seems to view 3 as radioactive, right?
And it felt like this would have been the past year to do it, the way the committee was talking. Like, we're going to make a big step towards the strength of schedule elements and giving you that idea. And then it wasn't even that Texas didn't make it. And I had tweeted before, and if you look back at what I was saying, like I had a feeling Texas wouldn't make it and probably didn't deserve it at 9-3 because of some other things that had happened. But you look and they're still behind BYU and Notre Dame, and that is, that's looking at a record, frankly. And BYU had a Utah win, but they played one really playoff level team and it wasn't all that competitive, really. And Texas Tech was clearly the better team.
So you said like a Utah win, right? So let's talk about the interconference like power rankings and what that means. So a very useful tool is look at Vegas win totals because they don't have any dog in the fight. They're just trying to like as best they can. So Vegas does take positions. People are always like, oh, they're always just trying to even out the money. Vegas does actually take positions sometimes, but Kentucky has a 4.5 win total this year. Okay. New coach that's actually going to try and like show up and not golf. New quarterback who actually might be good. People thought he was going to beat out CJ Carr. And when CJ Carr was announced over Kenny Minchey, the Notre Dame fan base freaked out.
Yeah.
So they thought Kenny Minchey was the anointed one, right? They did a great job in the portal, depending on which rankings you want to look at, depending on the metrics. It was a top 10 class, 4.5 wins. Okay. If they were in the Big 12, their win total would be 7.5 or 8.5.
Yep. Right here.
I mean, that's just a fact. If they were in the Big 10 and they drew the easy schedule, because the Big 10, like Ohio State legitimately has a hard schedule this year. I think probably the hardest in 30 years they've had. But you kind of seem to either every year you draw the hard Big 10 schedule or the breeze Big 10 schedule. And Indiana drew the breeze this year. Ohio State drew the hard. If Kentucky drew the breeze, their win total would be 6.5. Like, so I'm not doing the SEC chant and any of that because also I'm a Texas fan. I don't derive my identity from a conference. But there is something to the bad teams in the SEC still being athletic and dangerous. And the bad teams in the Big 10 are unathletic and very not dangerous. Yeah. So it's just how it is.
Yeah, the SEC is, even in a year where maybe one team is clearly at the bottom, which maybe that's Arkansas this year, but that also is maybe just a record thing where they have no way of getting to 3 wins because we're fine the 3 when they're playing. I believe they're playing a team at a conference and they're working with a new head coach. But there's something to be said that like the 15th best SEC team is almost always going to be athletically ahead of the 15th best Big 10 team. And the Big 10 has 18 of them. And most of that 18 is kind of littered at the bottom with random names and your Rutgers and your Marylands and your Northwesterns who maybe there's a year, maybe there's Maryland next year will have all those freshmen from this past season who are turning into juniors and can maybe turn a corner. But how often will that actually show up into an upset, especially if you're playing another easy team the week before? And that stacking of weeks is what really gets these SEC schools where sure, Kentucky in a random game that's just neutral field, play it whenever you want, they'll be able to put up a fight against anyone, probably. Maybe not Ohio State and Indiana and Texas, but they'll be able to put up a fight. But how does that look when you played 4 games in October and 2 of them were on the road and you haven't had your bye that's coming up the next week, and then you got to go play another SEC team? Like that's where it becomes construed about what realistic expectations are for each team in each conference and what can actually be achieved. And there's this idea that I've kind of thrown around, Paul, that I'd love your take on, where you talk about what it actually means to qualify for this playoff. It's generally they're asking a team to be the 12th best team to just get in. You have to be number 12 or number 11, whatever it is with the P4 teams to get in. My question that I pose to you is, say you're looking at Texas's schedule to be the 11th best team in the nation. Not saying that you have to be clearly a top 5 team, but to be the 11th best team. What could you realistically expect that program, without a logo, without a face, to do when they're playing Ole Miss, Ohio State, A&M, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Missouri, LSU? What would realistically be overachieving in a way that you'd be the 11th best team?
9
wins? Yeah. And I don't think 8-4 would, at that point you are losing 4 games, but you're telling me that you're beating at 9-3, 3 of, let's say, A&M, Oklahoma, LSU, Tennessee, Ohio State, Ole Miss, and then you have to win all the easy ones.
Yeah.
Like that's what overachieving would be for this program. And so that's where it's just tough to accurately weigh that against Texas Tech down here. And you look at Miami over here as well, who we haven't touched on like that. Miami gets Notre Dame, and then their next toughest game is Duke, which I believe is a home game for them. So, and they've just rated that roster. Like they're the reason Duke won't be good this year. So it does kind of take up the idea of there's never going to be a way with the way we're scheduling these teams to ever have it be fair. And I want to know, Paul, like, are you in favor of every team having to play 10 power conference teams?
Yeah, I mean, so ultimately I was against. So I think the Big Ten has been running circles around the SEC in setting the agenda, in basically determining, there's the old idea in ancient battle that you prepare the battlefield, right? If you can get there first and dig trenches and put up spikes, and you'll have an advantage. I feel like the Big Ten's getting to the battlefield first every time and preparing the battlefield. They basically suckered / bullied the SEC into going to 9 regular, season games in conference. And I ultimately would have preferred 8 and then play a more robust out of conference schedule. And if everyone does it, then you're not the odd man out, like challenging yourself. Now, I know the problem with that is inherently the SEC, you've got a whole middle class that's predicated on, I've got to get 4 non-con wins, or now 3, so I can go 7-5 and my fans will pretend that we had a successful season and we went to a bowl, right? So so if we're just saying ideal world, I would play 8 conference games and make people play 2 or 3 P4 opponents.
Yeah, fair.
And if you want to play, an FCS school and, freaking Rice, that's fine. But you're also going to play randomly Michigan State and, Maryland, whatever. And you're going to get enough of these data points and cross-conference play that you can actually make some determinations. So, some people are mentioning you can't lose to Florida. Florida had 7 guys drafted. Like that's the point. So is there any dispute they're a sorry football team in many regards? Yes. Is there any dispute that they're talented and that if they play up and you have a bad game plan, which we did on both sides of the ball, you can lose. You're in peril. And it was still early in the season where they were still trying, and it's like trying to turn things around. They kind of gave in a little later. Yeah. But by the same token, I agree. Texas was really weird for the playoff. If you look just at the end of the season product and you say, what team is best poised to go in the playoff and make a run, I would have picked Texas 7th or 8th of any team in the country.
Yep.
Okay. If you say you have to look at the totality of resume and the entire season, we don't even belong in the conversation for the playoff. So that's how much Texas improved. And that improvement happened late. Georgia beat the crap out of us, at least in the fourth quarter. Honestly, I can't complain that Texas didn't make it in, but it is irritating to turn on the television and watch the playoff and you see several teams, you're like, Texas would beat that team.
Definitely. I think we're going to throw it over to our good friend, David McClellan, then we'll get back to you talking a little bit more about this upside idea.
Big financial decisions don't have to feel overwhelming. There's someone who can guide you every step of the way. David McClellan is a fiduciary financial advisor with Forum Financial, and he's working closely with his clients as a true financial life coach, guiding every aspect of your financial journey with expertise and care. If his name sounds familiar, that's because David was a swimmer at Texas and a member of several national championship teams. Today, he channels that same championship mindset into helping people win with their finances. David specializes in financial planning, and he's contributed numerous articles to Keipelinger on the topic of retirement tax bombs. And right now, David is offering viewers a free intro consultation to assess your financial situation. Do not miss this chance to get personalized guidance from a trusted expert. To schedule your free consult, email David at dmcclellan@forumfinancial.com, or you can call him directly at 312-933-8823. The contact info is in the description.
Paul, you left off right there talking about how that Texas team really ramped up at the end, and how obviously the top 10 wins, you beat Vanderbilt, you beat A&M, even the Georgia game was competitive through most of it, more competitive in some ways than Florida. So when you're looking at the modern idea of how you want to make your team better for the end of the season and be able to do what Miami did, be 10-2, and maybe you have your faults in the regular season, but have the ability to go and make a run. What are you looking for in a roster that can go and do that? What kind of characteristics is a team who has that upside and ability at the end? What do you want to see on that team to be able to go out and actually execute?
Well, this is a little harsh, but you can't have any starters that suck.
Yeah.
And we had starters that sucked.
And that's a floor argument as well.
That created some floor for us, right? It made us particularly vulnerable where, it's funny, like if you're an inferior basketball player, but you can defend a little bit and you're athletic, and a guy can't go to his right, but he's more skilled than you, he can shoot, he's freaking, he's quick, all that, he has all these traits, but he has that one glaring weakness. You can kind of shut him down. You can kind of humiliate him, right? Now, if he fixes that, he's going to light you up for 40 points, right? So I think that's kind of what happened with us, with our offensive line. I think also we fixed some stuff in terms of game plan tactics. And I think the receivers played a little better too. And obviously Arch elevated. But I think Arch would have elevated around mid-season if the supporting cast was ready for that or could have allowed that. But, he was carrying an anchor. When you're dropping back and literally an interior defensive lineman untouched is screaming at you, people are like, get rid of the ball. It's like, dude, your receiver's not even, like, his back is to you. Like, there's no options. So, it was just miserable. And, that's a failing of personnel. It's a failing of our ability to self-evaluate. We had an off season. I was concerned about our O-line. I was concerned about sort of our overall talent in some other areas of our offense, particularly. And the staff was like, no, we're good. And we were not good. So we did move some stuff around and get up to adequate at every position. And it's amazing how getting up to adequate at your bottom floor positions allows all your stars to just completely explode. And that's kind of what happened in Texas.
Yeah, I think back to how the offense played against Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, which was the very first time that they had the duo of Hudson and Robertson in. That was, if you remember correctly, like Hudson got hurt, which is why at Kentucky Robertson was playing. And then they realized, like, hey, what if we just throw Hudson at guard, even though he's been injured? It might just be better. And suddenly they scored 45, I think 38 in regulation, 31 if you're not counting the Niblett punt return. But still, that's way better than it was against Kentucky, where they were scraping to get 14 points throughout that game without a big punt return. So is there a position group, Paul, that you look at from these last two Miami and Ohio State teams that you go, like, that's the reason why they made that run? Even with the two losses, like, I could have told you this because of these players.
Well, that's an interesting question, because they actually had contrasting strengths. Where they were similar is dominant defensive line play.
Yeah, that's right.
Miami had a pair of edges that were just monsters. And then their interior defensive line was no joke either. Guys like Moten, are ridiculous. So was Ohio State was loaded as well. Offensive lines were a contrast. Miami was dominant on the O-line. Ohio State's weakness was O-line. That is how they got a couple of times, Michigan particularly. And they were kind of disguising that O-line in the playoff. And that's where Will Howard actually came in, besides being a veteran. He can move around a little. And also, if you get a hand on him in the pocket, he's, 6'5", 240?
Yeah,
he doesn't just wilt and fall down. So, he's sort of an anti-Ewers in that respect. A hand can go brush across him. He's not going to fall down. So, that was an interesting contrast. And then, of course, Ohio State was loaded at wide receiver, defensive back. Miami was good at those positions. Malachi Toney's obviously very good, but in totality, they were not overwhelming. And then I thought the running backs were kind of a push. But yeah, I think Miami, interestingly, really in the trenches was dominant. And then they kind of had to get it together at the skill positions. And Carson Beck too is like a puzzling guy, because you and I watched him live And you just look at his stats and his record as a starter. 20 years from now, people are like, Carson Beck was one of the all-time greats. And you're like, well, we watched him. But he's like, what do you mean? The guy was 39-2 as a starter or whatever it is.
5 total losses overall.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing. But he seemed to I don't know. They seemed to sort of work around him in the playoffs as best they could. And he was fine. But
well, and you found 60 of your passing yards a game by just popping it to Tony in front of you and bringing the sweep around. They really just found every way to, like, CJ Daniels is a pretty good blocking wide receiver, and they had the 9th-year guy at tight end, I believe, was still hanging around. So they just had guys who could win at the line of scrimmage and get it done. Really, if you just needed a fourth quarter, that's all you need at some times. Is I'm thinking of the Texas-Alabama game. Like, if your defensive line and offensive line can dictate how the game goes and the flow of the football, you're probably just going to win those games, no matter who you're playing against, no matter how close it is. So as we look towards this 2026 Texas roster and what they've done in building, would you agree in saying that just bringing in Cam Coleman alone probably increases their title odds by a decent-sized amount, just because of what a one game-to-game type of player he could be if they make that playoff?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's obviously a huge asset to this team, because we kind of had the guys that were pretty skilled receivers weren't very explosive or talented. And then our really explosive, talented guys aren't very skilled receivers. Cam Coleman is the guy who's both. And because he's both, he can unlock everyone else and kind of let them do their little thing. So I think Wingo became our de facto number one receiver, and he's just not that. He's just not skilled enough. So you could line up Wingo and Elijah Surratt and have them compete physically in any contest, vertically, bench, 40, whatever, and Elijah Surratt will lose every single competition. On a football field, he's a better football player.
Yeah.
He's just more skilled. But Wingo, if you take the heat off of him, he's really explosive. And I think he'll really benefit from that. And then I think other guys as well. We just have a lot of different receiver types now and body types. Jermaine Bishop, God, can you imagine him as a number 3 receiver? Like getting the third best cover guy if the other team plays man? Like, good Lord.
And that's going to be slots, which some of those teams, that's just a big nickel who's more of a safety. And, like, how do you defend that? What do you do?
There's a lot of teams that are 6'3", 220 nickel, because he's in there to help against the run. And, they have a cover over the top, to help him in case, someone runs a slot fade. But there's a lot of space in between the top and that guy. And a guy like Jermaine Bishop is going to be zigzagging all around and just turning him around. It's going to be incredible. So, I'm excited. I think Cam Coleman does unlock some stuff. But to the point of don't suck anywhere, we need that Lawrence Seymour to hit. If he doesn't hit, we need Dylan Sikorsky to hit, or we need natural improvements within the program. We can't have an O-line starter who sucks, or 2.
Yeah, and that's the baseline of it, and that's part of getting there as well. If you have 2 starters that suck, no matter what side of the ball it is, you're probably going to struggle and get to those 3 losses. Let's hear from Gabe Winslow, Paul, and then we'll keep talking about this discussion.
Well, we're not going to hear from Gabe Winslow. He's not here.
Okay, we aren't now? I'm getting my signals.
I can talk about him as his representative to you.
Yes, correct.
As his intermediary, I will now speak to the people on his behalf. I want to be clear that I am not Gabe Winslow. It's not my alter ego. I'm not Tyler Durden or anything like that. But Gabe Winslow is the best damn mortgage guy in the great state of Texas. If you're the best in Texas, Evan, you're the best in the world. You can reach him at 832-557-1095. Why Gabe? Because this is the biggest financial decision of your life. You need someone who's a former National Merit Scholar, a proud Texas grad. He's got a law degree, 20 years in the industry, and he's absolutely fantastic at what he does. Every time I talk to the guy, he's on some freaking award trip because he does an incredible amount of volume, and he's one of the biggest producers in the great state of Texas. It's because he's great at his job, and he gets a ton of referrals and word of mouth. Just call the guy. He's sharp as a tack. You'll realize it within a minute of talking to him. Outline your financial situation. If you're looking for a house, Get pre-qualified now. Call Gabe, 832-557-1095.
I gotta start listening to some of your advice because we are in the house shopping time of the year. It's more renting, just my buddies and I. But let me tell you, this market is tough to just even if you want to find a house to rent, they're gone in a second after you tour.
Evan, you can't rent a car. How are you going to buy a house?
I said rent a house. A house.
You can't rent a house if you can't rent a car. That's the rule.
I can listen. They get my credit score. They see how much Eric's paying me, and they go, "Wow, well the pay's a little low, but you got good credit, so we'll give it to you." Before we keep going, a very important question has been thrown. Sorsby, Brendan Sorsby from Texas Tech, formerly of Indiana, first fame, and of course Cincinnati, showed it that he was locked in on his team by betting on them. Is there a problem if this Texas team isn't betting on themselves, or are they not locked in enough if they're not betting on themselves?
Well, I think they might have concerns about their eligibility to play college football. But, if they're doing it under pseudonyms or through Evan, maybe Evan's got a side hustle. No, I mean, look, honestly, the Sorsby stuff's insane. Did you see some of the stuff he was betting on?
Yeah, I mean, Romanian basketball, underwater Turkish, handball. We joke, but that is addiction, and that's when you got it bad. But still, what are you doing? Was he walking these?
There's
just throw the bet on.
There's certain dudes who just need to feel something all the time. Do you know any guys like that?
Yes, yeah, I do.
These are the friends in college that if nothing was happening, they'd smash a bottle on the ground in front of a cop just to see what would happen. Let's mix things up. I want to feel something. I want this cop to chase me. I think Sorsby is that personality, and that could be very useful in a quarterback. He's brave, go for it guy. But he's done. Did you see the pictures of the judge though that's ruling on the scale?
Where he's doing the rifle thing with the mascot.
Oh my God. So look, I mock and hate the NCAA in so many areas, but this is one area where they legitimately have this hill to die on. You can't allow betting. You just can't.
No.
It's so fundamental to the underpinnings of the sport that if people think it's a work, if people think it's there's the picture. If people think it's fake, the whole thing unravels. So Sorsby's done, and I don't care what the judge says. Some local judge can't force the NCAA to allow a player to participate. I just don't think that's possible. So
and I get that the judge has a certain standing in his own jurisdiction or wherever he may be, but at some point it's can you sacrifice your integrity over something where it's clear as day. He bet on the team he was on, and that keeps people out of the Hall of Fame in sports. And clearly the NCAA, that's going to be their spot where they put their foot down and say this is something we cannot stand by. We're going to make an example of Sorsby. And I don't know I don't think he's ever going to play another game for Texas Tech or anyone.
No, and honestly, if this had been last year, he would have gone in the second or third round, probably in the supplemental draft.
Well, and I think he can.
So happens the best quarterback class in 30 years is coming next year or this year. So, this feels awful for him. Hey, in terms of jurisdiction, what if Sorsby, the judge, rules that he can play in Lubbock, but he can't play road games?
You can only stay at home.
Yeah, it's
isn't their Houston game, which is their most important one, at AT&T Stadium?
Is that a neutral or is that?
I think it might be. I thought I heard that. I'd have to look that up. If it was that would be the only game they really need him in. So
yeah,
did he play in Dallas?
Here's the funniest thing. I kind of I do bet, not Sorsby type betting, but I was kind of looking at Texas Tech and I was like, I think they're going to have the same record. They're so much better than the rest of the Big 12, because it's not so much that Tech, first of all, Tech has greatly elevated their talent, but people don't realize the Big 12 has been depleted. 2 or 5 years ago, the Big 12 was much better.
Yeah.
They've gotten worse every year. And so people think that there's a constancy there. No, the product is getting worse. And it's pretty obvious if you just sort of watch the quality of play qualitatively. It's it's not as good. And so even the Texas team that won the Big 12 and went and played, went to the Final Four playoffs, that was a tougher Big 12 than it is currently constituted now. So it doesn't mean a BYU or Utah can't field a good team in any given year. Maybe Houston, Keyshawn Henderson takes over, the guy who wears
Keyshawn Henderson.
Maybe there'll be some, great teams like as a one-off, but the bulk of the league, it's gotten worse.
Well, and you're also some of these names that you've been used to hearing at near the top in the late 2010s, and even somewhat recently, like Arizona State's kind of quietly, they've done well to get wide receivers in the portal, but they're quietly just not that talented of a team, especially not compared to like the one that with Levitt and Tyson. And I know Tyson was out, but that team played Texas and Oklahoma State. They're doing their best. They've hired a new coach, but Oklahoma State is far from what they used to be. Baylor, that Dave Aranda season, like that was years ago. TCU's not quite the same because they're just getting their quarterbacks rated. And so you're going to keep seeing that with the Big 12, that the average game is just not even close to even, I mean, the ACC probably in the same idea, but I think there's a few more at the top ACC talent teams than you're going to see from the Big 12 year after year.
Well, the developmental league idea is real because Sam Levitt, LSU, Mensa, Miami, and I love Mensa.
He's gonna be good.
I mean, all the big the direction only goes one way, and it's up. It's not like TCU isn't taking Miami's quarterback. TCU isn't taking Texas's quarterback unless it's a backup, right? So yeah, I think that's just how it's going to be. Unless you get a guy who's, for whatever reasons, like that's his team, he's not leaving, he doesn't care. But it is instructive that when Arizona State went on the road to Mississippi State, the two teams were not, like they were comparably talented. Like it wasn't, Arizona State was a better team and they got upset, but it wasn't like, ooh, they made a bunch of terrible mistakes and threw away the game. It was like, oh, these teams are comparable. And, that's kind of a wake-up call.
I do see, and here's a question or talked about, it's already up on the screen about the tech transfers, like where they're coming from. And somewhat, yes, but I mean, you look at their top group and Trick from Miami, Ohio was kind of one of their big names. And I know that's a G5 guy, but on a defensive lineman, a senior from Wake Forest, and a linebacker from Kansas State, and a wide receiver from Auburn, and another interior guy from Louisville. Like there's still, what they do so well is they get the best ones from the G6 because they know that there's not that much of a difference between the teams they're playing at the very top of the G6 and the average team that Texas Tech is going to play. But then they also add in these baseline helpful guys in the trenches from the Power 5 ranks. Yeah,
I mean, the best 2 or 3 guys at Boise State, San Diego State, et cetera, they could go show up at a Texas practice and hang and be just fine. Like some of them would be stars. It's the next 40. Like that's the big disparity. And Tech doesn't care about the next 40. They're going after the top 2 or 3. So I do think, to their credit, I know they do have a kind of a big bankroll and all that. They've done a pretty good job of evaluating. Like they've hit on most of those guys. They've had some misses. I mean, the Micah Hudson thing and all that. But I mean, for the most part, they've done a pretty good job, as you said, evaluating those G6 guys. And it's not always easy to tell who levels up and who doesn't. I mean, I remember getting an argument like 3 years ago when Ashton Genty was possibly going in the portal. I was like, oh man, we need to get this guy. And people are like, we have Jaden Blue, like we're loaded. And I was like, no, like this guy's really good. And people are like, whatever, Boise State. He lit up Colorado State. It's like, you have to be able to kind of understand like what translates, what travels up, and Tech does a good job of it. So, kudos to them in that regard. That said, I just don't think they have the totality of roster that some other the real elites have. But if you got an interested billionaire, anything's possible.
I'm with you on that, and you will give them to their credit. Like part of it is also developing these transfers when they get in, and I don't think David Bailey was the number 2 overall pick in anyone's head when he came to the team, and he was obviously talented, but he was a late transfer and a guy from Stanford that was good, but not number 2 good. And same with, Romello Height didn't have a ton of buzz coming in, and that's a day 2 pick, and they helped Lee Hunter get there. So they do a good job with what with the players they acquire when they get there. But like you said, at some point, a bit of that, it is the Big 12 team that's being built, and a bit of the how can your 30th best player match up against a Texas or Miami or an Ohio State? Where does that look when you're on the field? So a question here that I want to get to, I don't know how much we've talked about it on Inside Texas, but Le'Veon Moss, UDFA into retirement in the NFL, and I believe there's 2 other examples of guys who didn't get drafted who ended up signing with teams' practice squads and then have retired. Do you think this is an NIL thing, Paul? Is it just kind of a freak 1-year problem? What's going on here?
No, I don't know. I'm unfamiliar with this. What's going on exactly?
So Le'Veon Moss from Texas A&M, who he was obviously a good player with some injury problems, but clearly had NFL talent to go and play. He signs with the Dolphins, and I think a few days later announces his retirement, and he's one of 3 players to do so who played at college football. I think 2 of them played at a Power 4 school, and then they sign with the team and are just immediately done with football for some reason. And it feels like kind of a just weird coincidence, but do you think there's anything to NIL with that these UDFA guys are saying, well, I've already gotten my money?
Well, I mean, they're not holding on to it. I mean, if you know most of the spending habits of athletes, I mean, most multimillionaire athletes are bankrupt within 5 years of retirement. So I can't imagine NIL is going to tide him over for life. Maybe it's just injury related. I mean, maybe the guy can't play football anymore. I don't know. We probably need more data points. But that's really interesting. What is interesting that I do think has informed how coaches act is because the money's gotten so big. How many coaches have effectively retired on the job and then just said, fire me so I get my payout?
Yeah.
I mean, Kelly did that, which surprised me. Kelly profiled to me as hard achiever, go-getter, lots of pride tied up into his coaching. I mean,
that was
the info coming out of LSU is he was a ghost. He barely did anything. Basically,
AD calling him a ghost.
I mean, he had worked his butt off and then gotten to a certain point, had this huge contract, and was like, I don't care. I'm not a fit here. Go ahead and fire me. Stoops thought he would revitalize his career at A&M. That turned sideways. He had to go back to his wife after trying to run off with the hot stripper, right? And that didn't go well. And he basically just said, I'm going to quiet quit. I'm not trying very hard. I'm golfing a lot. Hugh Freeze did that at Auburn.
Freeze definitely did it.
I mean, that's not a thing that used to happen. It really wasn't. And I think the money's so big now that the financial incentives have gotten so skewed for coaches that, I mean, so to give you an example, when I was a kid, Fred Akers was the head coach at Texas. Yeah. Obviously made good money for, inflation adjusted, nothing compared to what coaches make now, even if you adjust for inflation. His kids went to public school. I knew where his house was. He lived in a nice house, and then his neighbors were surgeons and lawyers. Being the head coach at a major college football program didn't make you filthy rich. It made you very well off and well positioned. But you had to work. There wasn't this sense of I'm 50 and I've made it, and I hope they fire me. I'll get $78 million. I don't give a crap. That's a new thing. I mean, man, if you're hiring coaches, you better, beyond the Sharon Moore character evaluation piece, you've got to figure out, is this dude burnt out and just wants his last big payday?
Yeah. I can see it already affecting some programs who, for Kentucky, they cut bait maybe a little even earlier than some people thought. And I think overall it was a very savvy move to go get Stein, and he's already done a good job there. But I think of a Wisconsin or a Baylor where it just feels like they're carrying around dead weight because they know that they won't be able to hire anyone yet that would really move the needle. And they maybe need one more year of data for some of these G6 coaches, but they're still paying a guy who does anyone have confidence in Fickle or Aranda to really regain what their selling points were 5 years ago, and why Fickle was so good at Cincinnati, why Aranda had that elite Baylor defense. I mean, Norvell, I think in Florida State's the exact same way. It seems like some teams have having to kind of take a year off because they know that they have one of these coaches. But what are they going to do? I mean, it's going to cost them too much money to cut him, and there's not the replacement there yet.
It's the cheaper to keeper, mentality that some people have. Later in life, maybe they grow apart from their spouse, and they're just like, "You live your separate life, I'll live mine." It's too much of a pain to divorce right now. I think with Norvell, I think the issue with him. So it's kind of interesting because I know some Florida State people that are pretty connected. He's weird, apparently.
Huh. I can see that.
And I was like, "What does that mean?" And he's like, we keep recruits away from him.
Odd.
Like, he's odd. And so what he kind of did one year was, I'm master of the universe with the portal, and they nailed a bunch of portal guys.
Yeah.
And then everyone adopted the portal. They were an early adopter of the portal, kind of like Missouri, where Missouri really nailed the portal early, and they still do a good job, actually. But Florida State, once everyone else weighed in, they were no longer like masters of the universe with the portal, and they started making bad decisions. And then you realized that unlike a Signetti who got these Indiana mercenaries to buy in, like, we're a team that will die for each other, at Florida State, it's like, I'm getting paid. I don't give a crap about the school. I don't give a crap about our traditions. The season went sideways. I'm going to say I'm injured and sit out the rest of the year and transfer out or go pro. Like, it's something's going on there that's off. And it's kind of like Clemson. You can't put your finger on it. Like, something's demonstrably off. They had 9 dudes drafted to the NFL, and they went 7-6 in the ACC.
And what, like 4 of them were top 50 guys? Like,
dude,
Parker,
you and I could coach Clemson to 9-3 in the ACC.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. You can't lose to Syracuse. Like, I mean, what?
That group of talented teams with Penn State, LSU, Clemson that we've talked about, where some of these NFL teams might be getting a bargain on some of their players, where, like, Katron Allen was kind of like a Penn State legend coming into the year. And it was this guy and Singleton are going to lead them to the promised land. And they're the number 2 team for a reason. And then, if your coach kind of quit in your, really not even your coach, but your university quits on your program in halfway through the year, like, why would you ever care that much? Like, why would I play hard for this team and risk injury when, I'm not saying this would happen, but for someone like Justin Cryer, like, I could just go in the offseason to Texas, and the evaluation before was, oh, well, I was maybe a little slow, but that was on a bad defense. I can come and be fast and show up and play at a higher level because I actually care about the team I'm playing on.
Yeah, well, and here's the interesting thing. So we're talking about teams that are sort of not caring, or they're unaligned and all that sort of stuff. I mean, Fickle's really interesting because he made a bet that was fundamentally wrong on offense. And it's why, like, I like defensive coordinators. There's a reason people are reluctant to hire them to be the head coach.
Yeah, at any level.
Because they make these gaffes on offense that offensive guys don't make the equivalent number of gaffes hiring on defense. And
because there's less ego, I think.
I don't know what it is, but his thing was not, I'm going to protect my defense and play like Kirk Ferentz ball. It was, I'm going to run the spread, veer and shoot, air raid in Madison, Wisconsin. I mean, there's a local genotype, and that genotype is not South Florida. So
it's Jonathan Taylor running the ball behind big, burly Iowa corn-fed offensive linemen.
You go get a bunch of 3 stars from Florida, Texas, and Georgia to play your skill positions, and then you recruit a bunch of dudes, redshirt them, and you put them in an awesome weight room program. They take supplements, and you have 6'7", 320-pound dudes, 5 across, mashing people. I mean, that's Wisconsin football, and it was a winning formula. And he's like, "Nah, I'm gonna get small and fast and throw it around." It's like, you're gonna get small and fast with who? Yeah, like, you're in Wisconsin.
Well, and in 2023, that team he inherited had, Braylon Allen. Like, I mean, that was one of the most electric young, like 17-year-olds, and they went 7 wins because they just didn't give him the ball enough. Like, they just didn't accept what the offense had to be. The next year, they added Tawi Walker, like an Oklahoma burnout kind of player. Like, it just was never that great enough for the SEC or even high-level Big 12. And, like, of course, you're not going to have this electric run game that you're used to back in the days of Wisconsin.
Well, so we've talked about the negative of what about schools when they kind of give up on the program or they're misaligned. What about when they rediscover an interest? Indiana is the greatest example ever. I mean, if you're not familiar with the Big Ten, they were the joke. They were the joke of the Big Ten.
They were the worst Power 4 team before he got there ever.
I mean, absolutely. And so here's another thing that's not maybe on a lot of people's radars: UCLA.
Yes, for sure.
I love their new head coach hire. He signed more 4-star recruits in a 24-hour period than UCLA has signed in the last 3 years. Like, suddenly UCLA has decided they care. And this is after
just that.
It's like they haven't cared in 20 years. And all of a sudden, you're in Southern California. There's no other competition for local recruits other than USC and Oregon.
USC goes too far sometimes, though.
True. And so UCLA is in this enviable position that they could build themselves up into a really good football team very quickly. So if Sark ever does win the national title and goes off to the NFL, Bob Chesney needs to be on our short list.
Yeah. I think another team that's obviously in the same 1 year just got the new head coach, but Oklahoma State's going back to what Oklahoma State was good at. Like they hired a coach who can go and throw the ball all over the place and get you a quarterback who they'll have for 2 years, who will be able to throw it anywhere on the program and anywhere in the field and find, Wyatt Young was probably the best G5 wide receiver you could have gotten. And they still brought him in to stay with the coach. So like those programs, once they see once they get a coach that they can tell isn't what we were talking about earlier, who isn't just going to sit in his seat and go golf and talk with who he has to, but not who he should. Once those teams see that, there's reason to hit the acceleration button and add in the dollar, because it is just dollar bills. Just if we have the right guy, just here's some money, and we trust you to go spend it the right way.
Yeah, and the funny thing is it's age related, but it's not purely driven by age, because the most hard ass possible coach ever is Nick Saban. Like the most like they win the national title, he's like, we're getting up and watching film tomorrow. We got to recruit.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's his post-game interview when there's like confetti falling on him. And he's like 70 at that time, right? So it's not entirely, I mean, Signetti, the big concern with him is like, oh, he's an older coach. Time's passed him by. It's like, okay, guess not.
And that pays in their favor, though, because he won't leave. Like he's not going to want to get up and go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy who's a huge chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And I think it was made known to him early in his career, you're a position coach. And he was like, no, I'm a head coach and I'm going to show you. And he took a bunch of crappy jobs and built himself up. And his whole thing is like, I'm going to show you. And that is a very powerful motivator, because the minute a head coach gets complacent and like, man, I've got it good. Like, I mean, my joke was with Gary Patterson. Once I learned he put out a country album, I was like, okay, it's over at TCU. And Gary Patterson was the most hard-driven, like, go-get-em guy. I was like, now he knows the names of his kids, and he's, like, going on vacation. Like, this dude's over. So you need to hire a coach that's a psychopath. That's the short story of all this.
That is the short story. I think that's got all of our time for the day. Thank you so much, Paul, for it. We went down a few different topics. It's been a fun one.
We did.
Talking roster building, but also strength of schedule, but also, Brendan Sorsby. So make sure you guys are going over if you want more discussion like this. This is how it is on Paul's articles. You'll find some really interesting points whenever he writes and whenever the rest of the Inside Texas crew is at their best, which is going to be over these next 3 months, which you can get for $1 right now. New members only sale. The best you're going to get in all of Texas reporting to get football, basketball, and baseball news whenever you want and need. Thank you all so much for watching. It's been Evan and Paul on the Wednesday morning IT Live. We'll talk to you later.